we focus on saying the right things, doing the right things, controlling situations, but being the one with the most regulated nervous system in a room, I believe, is far more powerful than saying the right thing.
Welcome to another episode. I am your host, and as always, I am very grateful to be with you today on this podcast. I am super excited about this conversation today, not only because of the topic, but because of who I am here with. This sister right here, she is definitely a sister from another mister, and she also happens to be another one of my TEDx cohorts. I am ecstatic to have this conversation with Meghan O'Malley. She's the owner of her own company. What is the name of your company, Meghan?
I just call it Meghan O'Malley Coaching for now. I'm in a constant rebrand and evolution.
So Meghan is the founder of Meghan O'Malley Company. But her zone of genius is imaginal change. She traffics in the science of magical living and building relationships and ecosystems where human diversity can thrive. One of the things that I really connected with about Meghan from the moment we met was her energy. And when she started to talk about what she did, the complete intersection of work that she does and work that I do. And the more and more I listen to her, especially when I heard her TEDx talk, by the way, it's out. And so you better go listen to it. Of course, you better listen to mine too. But the intersection of our work was so loud that I had to bring her onto the podcast. So it is my pleasure. And by the way, we met during this process. We've become fast friends, and we have a lot of work that we're going to be doing together. So stay tuned. Meghan, welcome to the show.
I am beyond grateful to be here, and so grateful that the big love from moment one was so reciprocal. We chose each other real fast, and then have been unpacking why we knew we were in such alignment. So I'm just grateful to have this conversation and to have you in my world.
Yes. I would like for the audience to start to get to know you a little bit better because you are our guest of honor. So why don't you share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you've come to be where you are in this space?
Got it. I'll give a distilled origin story that got me here because I think that makes it all make sense. So my original starting point professionally on my path of purpose was I got double majors in Spanish and Latin American studies. I wanted to be a farm worker, activist, advocate. That's where I started. I quickly learned that was not going to sustain me, and finding a job was going to be really hard. So I taught Spanish for a year in middle school and found myself having lots of emotional conversations with young people and realized it just didn't make sense to me, even in my early 20s, how they could learn if they were trying to process all of this emotional stuff, which led me to become a therapist. And I did that for a number of years, but got a bit disenchanted with the paradigm that was, I couldn't bring my whole toolbox to it. The energy modalities, the neurofeedback. I was always training on the periphery, traditional medical model. And so then that's what led me to become a coach, because that's the best word I can find at this point. But I'm really a guide in between stories. We are at a really powerful time, I believe, in history where individually and collectively we're being asked to really tap into creative intelligence to move beyond what hasn't worked rather than just trying to move the furniture around of what's not working. And that requires a really unique skill set because our tendency neurologically is to repeat what we know. Even when we think we're not, we are. We're recycling the same beliefs and pretending they're new and these deep patterns. And I believe that connection and the way we relate to each other is fundamental in how we change the world. Yeah. It's not just a mental concept. It's who we be and how we be with each other. So that's what I stand for. And that's what I'm here to do and be in my personal and professional life to the best of my ability.
Yes. I heard another connection point in your origin story, which is the fact that you were always studying on the periphery during your traditional education. And that is something that I did as well in the realm of traditional Chinese medicine and five element theory, in the realm of energy work as well. Like I did a lot of my energy work training prior to actually entering medical school, and a lot of the discovery of essential oils and like just different nutritional pathways, that like that was all along the periphery of my training. And so that's just another connection point that we have there.
Yeah. And the synthesis, I think one of the things I've seen in healing approaches is things are very sectioned off.
Yeah.
For years, I would go, I did my shamanic training and didn't tell anybody. And then I put my scarf on and went into the therapy office. And then I had to do all these different things that were so disjointed. And what I find is people feel soothed when they're allowed to have it all part of the same conversation, because we are multidimensional beings.
Yeah.
We are spiritual, we are practical, all of these things. And we are somatic, we are intelligent. Like I find it, I was concerned for years about bringing it all together. Like, what are people going to think? And it's resonant for people.
Yes.
It really does go, yeah, oh, thank you for letting all of me be here.
Absolutely. And the thing that comes to mind is in the world of neurolinguistic programming, which is part of my training background, there's a saying that the unconscious mind thrives best in the state of wholeness. And so what you are speaking to is this space of where everything in the traditional model, or where we've in the past had to be fractured in the way we've trained, when we bring it, that's why I did my practice in integrative medicine, because similar to you, I was able to bring in my Western medicine training and all of that evidence-based stuff into my training in acupuncture, into my training as a coach and a hypnotherapist, and a worker of the unconscious mind, my energy work, like all of that to cultivate an experience of wholeness in the healing. And that's exactly what I hear you speaking to.
Yeah. Integration on all levels, right? And when we do our healing work in that place, I believe it shifts how we see the larger systems around us that are also fractured, right?
Yes.
Like there's this as within situations. That's part of why I'm passionate about the idea of more embodied, integrated leadership and modalities.
And I think that it sounds like, again, another connection point. One of the reasons I transitioned was because I felt like I was called to heal at a higher level. And so the space that we're in now is this space of healing human connection.
Yeah.
Healing human connection. In fact, that was what my TEDx talk was really all about.
Yep.
It was the beginning of it, right? Like how do we move from apology to repair? But like this space of how do we heal one another? Because as you stated, we thrive inside of our human connection. And we don't get anything done outside of community, right? Like of course, there's things that we get done in our individual lives, but when the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's like one of my favorite proverbs. And so I think because, as you stated, things are so fractured right now that we're all isolated. There's so much loneliness. I talked about that very recently in a podcast with our friend cohort, Jen Mayer, shout out. That there's so much loneliness, and loneliness is the new smoking. And so, yes, and can lead to heart disease and all these things.
Oh, just chronic stress. We live in a culture that so prioritizes independence and doing it all alone and all of that stuff. But there's a very real nervous system cost to that, because if we feel interpersonally, spiritually alone and unsupported, we are in a chronic stress state. It doesn't matter how many people are around us. It will make us ill in the way that our body expresses that. And I think it's tragic that we are so taught to function in a way that is so much a betrayal of our authentic needs.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking, so let's talk about this. I want to talk about human connection. I want to talk about this whole piece around how our brains work in human connection, because of course we got to geek out just a little bit
Totally. Let's
for
go.
the audience, and to talk a little bit about why this is so important that we move towards what's possible in human connection and not what's predictable. I like to talk about, just in general, how the brain works in terms of how we're connected, right? The limbic system.
Oh, okay. Well,
Go ahead.
I think about it a lot in terms of mirror neurons and the limbic system. So
Yeah.
one of the things I mentioned in my talk is that unless you've studied applied neuroscience, you may not have had affirmed that there are specialized brain cells that are literally in conversation,
Yeah.
silently, wordlessly, with everyone around you. So that's that feeling of when you get near someone or you're in a meeting with somebody and your system settles versus when you're around somebody and your system heightens and gets on edge. There's this whole primal, intuitive, embodied response that happens. And one of the things that was a game changer in my own learning is roughly 95% of what's going on, our functioning, our somatic response, our emotional response, our thoughts, it's unconscious. Yet we are a culture that says we should be able to figure everything out and control life on the conscious level.
Right.
So if 95% is unconscious, what that said to me is, damn, I'm going to figure out how to work with that because that's a better deal. That's a better return.
Yes.
And so my somatic training showed me if I can help people get into their bodies rather than constantly ejecting and abandoning them, it creates a felt sense of safety. People come home to themselves, they soothe themselves, they are with themselves, they are for themselves, they're safe with themselves. And then when that person walks into a room, it's like a warm campfire to those around. And it doesn't matter so much. We focus on saying the right things, doing the right things, controlling situations, but being the one with the most regulated nervous system in a room, I believe, is far more powerful than saying the right thing. Both matter, but I want to be someone, my goal, and I'm imperfect, but I want to go into a room and for people to feel a felt sense of safety in my presence, because they're going to be a better version of them from that place, rather than if I come in, which I totally have more times than I can count in my life, revved up, worried, anxious, trying to control life, then I'm going to share that too. So there's a level of embodied responsibility. My Reiki master said this to me years ago. She said, Meghan, you have big energy. When you walk into a room, people are going to feel what you feel. And not in a punitive way, but she said that to me. And I was like, oh, there's an energetic responsibility to be curious and attuned to what I'm bringing into the space rather than what I'm performing in the space.
Yeah. It's interesting because, as you said, 95% of what we do is unconscious, and 7% of communication is words, 93% of communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
So, again, what you're speaking to is like that nonverbal conversation that we're always having, no matter what's going on, no matter what we think, we are always having a conversation. We are always in communication. And that energetic responsibility, that is part of that nonverbal conversation, that invisible contract that we're making with other people as we walk around, in our facial expressions and our body language, in just the energy that we bring, like, that it all comes out in our body language and facial expressions. But even if we're like stoic, stone face, that's an energy in and of itself. And so the silence, the way we hold silence, there are ways to hold silence. I was in the room with a community, and we were doing a capsule exercise, and we asked a question of the community, and there was a silence that was so loud. it was a very loud communication,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that is people think, well, silence is not, there's only one type of way to hold silence, but there are multiple ways to hold silence. And depending on how you hold that silence, the other person can feel the energy of that silence. Is it a silence of really holding the space, a gentle, a loving way of silencing? I'm going to make it a verb. Or is it a very silencing way, or an oppressive silence, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of silence are you holding? What kind of energy are you bringing into the room?
Yeah. And I think another, speaking of the limbic system, something I've found, I find this reflecting on my early childhood, but I also see it play out a lot in the world, is this dissonance between what people are saying and what we feel from them that almost feels a bit gaslighty. The unintended impact of that desire, well, not desire, that teaching that we need to perform, perfection, fine, okayness, even if we have this very messy, authentic human experience, the unintended impact on others is often anxiety. Often it feel that dissonance, that this doesn't feel like what they're showing, I can't make sense. And so I've learned just naming it. If I'm having a day,
Yes.
if I am have stuff going on and I'm still needing to show up somewhere that matters, I'll say, listen, if you feel my energy off, I just want you to know it has nothing to do with what's going on here or between us. I'm processing some stuff, and I just want to be really clear what this is and what this isn't. And you can feel someone settle because they're not trying to manage and figure out the energy that they can't name, but that doesn't feel right or good. So I also think, similar to my understanding of the work you do, just naming the hard thing and being willing to be imperfect about it, but be conscious and human, goes so far for nervous system safety.
It does. And it allows the other person to let go of trying to figure out or manage the other person, and to take care of themselves in the way they best need to take care of themselves.
Yep.
If I come into the room and I say, you know what, I'm having a day. If
Yeah.
I'm having a day, and I can go take care of myself without them having to worry, and
Yep.
they can take care of themselves in a very similar way without having to manage. And they can, if they desire to hold space, they can hold space. And one of the things I like to do is say, is there any way I can support you?
Yep.
How can I support you?
Yep.
And then that, in tune, the person who's maybe being affected or being the recipient of that communication, is there anything that I can do to support? Or is the thing that I can do to support is to break camp and leave that person alone, right?
Yeah.
So those are ways to communicate in language what is uncommunicated in energy sometimes.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I find there are people who stand in front of rooms and say they want, know, care. They believe in supporting people and having diverse experiences in life, but they don't model it. And I think the idea of going from theory to practice matters. And so when you say, I'm having a day, I'm here, I'm so glad to be here, I'm going to take care of myself by doing X, Y, and Z, you don't have to manage me. Everyone in the room got that permission slip.
Yeah.
Everyone in that room now knows this is a culture of genuine self-advocacy, care, and boundaries. Like, I think we're asked to have embodied models of what this stuff looks like rather than just keeping it in theory. And that's vulnerable. That's real. That's messy. That's not perfect.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And I think that, coming back to how do we allow these things, permission for these things to be in the room? Some of it is by modeling, but some of it is by verbal invitation. Like, I have been in communication with a lot of organizations who have been reorging, who have been going through layoffs, right? And there are some team leaders that will say, hey, I know this is hard. I know that we are having a lot of changes. And then there are some organizations that are like, the weather report. Like, it's Tuesday, get to work, right?
Yeah.
And so when you are the kind of organization, even inside of an organization that may not acknowledge it, the kind of team leader that says, hey, this is happening
Yeah.
and this shit is hard.
Yep.
And I just want to give a space for people to say what they need to say
Yep.
or feel what they need to feel,
Yeah.
right? Like giving permission for the emotions to be in the room.
Yep.
And it is another way to model that vulnerability. Adjacent to that is modeling fallibility, modeling that I don't know everything, I'm not perfect, right? So, man, you know what? I don't have the answer to this, but
Yeah.
together we can work through it. And then
Yep.
allowing for the air to re-enter the room, right? I think there's an incredible value of learning to read the room.
Oh, yeah.
And in my linguistic world, we call that sensory acuity. And, and it's more than like with your eyes. I say listen with your whole body. And I
Yep.
think that like, coming back to that co-regulation, that limbic resonance, that this part of our brain, when we allow the somatics that you do, when leaders can really develop themselves
Yeah.
in that sensory acuity and walking into a room, taking a moment, because oftentimes you just walk into a room and go, okay, let's get going. This is the business of the day. Walk into the room, take a moment, look around, feel what's happening in the energy in your own body.
Yep.
And maybe it's business as usual, but maybe
Yep.
there's an energetic elephant in the room that maybe you can't even put your finger on. And all
Yeah.
it is like, hey, I'm feeling something. Everything okay? Like that's all you have to say.
That's
Everything
it.
okay? And then watch the room because maybe nobody will say something, but people will shift in their seats. And then if nobody's willing to talk, you'd be like, listen, I can see something's going on.
Yeah.
So is there something we need to talk about? What is the elephant in the room? Let's
Yeah.
name it. Like you
Yep.
said, coming back to what you said. So I just that you brought like, as you were talking, you brought up all this is the beauty of like our
Yeah.
conversations. You just brought up all that,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something about not having to be able to label what you're feeling, but naming that there's a something that was. I got leadership training that was life changing from the Coactive Training Institute years ago. And I've said for a long time, energy is my first language. I'm an intuitive, I'm an empath, I'm very feely, like that's all the things, right? And I
Right.
used to think that if I felt something weird in a space, I needed to process it and refine it until I could deliver it on a silver platter and be like, there, it feels like da, 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 da.
Yes.
And what I've learned is to be truly collaborative and affirming in that moment and to trust the space as much as I trust what's coming up for me can look like kind of like you modeled. Like the energy feels different today. Can anyone
Yes.
help? Can anyone put some words to that or a feeling to that? Because I want to name that to clear the path for what we're here to do. And it's
Yeah.
just, we all need practice, especially if we've grown up learning to bypass those deeper embodied
Yes.
experiences and intelligence. And just a pause. A lot of my work is about helping people individually, organizationally build nervous system capacity to sit in the not knowing long enough for the knowing to emerge. And it's really uncomfy. It's uncomfy.
Yeah.
But when we build that and we build ecosystems and cultures that allow that, there is capacity. And what comes up from that is far more valuable than whatever was trying to be pushed through that moment. It's like the long, short way. You're not going to have to go a million times in a million different directions. You're just going to pause and then know the North Star. And that's a totally different way of thinking than what we've been taught through industrial revolution, productivity, culture stuff that says, pick a point and go. Don't look back, mentally drive it home. It's just, the world is changing, thank goodness. And I think we're being invited and being really pressured from life to connect to what I call imaginal intelligence, which is that much more holistic, interpersonal, and deeper intelligence to build something moving forward.
It's interesting coming back to what you said about the imaginal intelligence, because you said you said something earlier, which is the fact that as we move to change, we're changing inside of the model that we already know, right?
Yeah.
And there are the things that you know that you don't know. And then there are the things that you don't know that you don't know, right? A lot of the change happens inside of everything that like models that are already existing in our consciousness. As we talk about this shift into this sort of like imaginative um, intelligence,
Yeah.
what could that look like in organizations, bringing in the space of emotional flexibility, bringing in the space of um, the somatic intelligence, bringing that as a function of leadership?
Totally. Yeah. For me, I think the leadership models we've inherited have been
Yes.
very left hemispheric. They've been
Mhm.
very mentally, logically heavy. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. Thank goodness. I mean, we both have businesses. We need that. But without also cultivating the connection to somatics, to nervous system intelligence, to the relational field, and in my world, to the quantum field. A lot of quantum physics shows if we can cultivate a feeling state or an imagined potential and really get that into our body, we literally start moving matter. This is mind-blowing stuff. If
Yeah.
the listeners haven't played in quantum physics, it might sound weird, but there's actual science and it's grounded in science. For me, it seems like starting a meeting with a 5-minute nervous system regulation tool with 5 minutes of what I call guided journey work. So where we're intentionally getting those parts of our brain more integrated. So we've got this sort of protective dimension of our being with the creative side holding hands, because everything works better when we have access to our full intelligence.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be long. This is what I think people don't realize. It can literally be 5 minutes. It can be 2 minutes, and it will change the trajectory of everything. It creates efficiency.
Yeah. I love that. I think that what is needed in the implementation of something like this is the willingness to play.
Yeah. And
The
not know.
willingness to play and not know. Play with, as they say, without abandon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it reminds me of some of these videos that I see, and I mentioned this I think in a previous podcast. There's this video platform, y'all, called Marco Polo that I use to communicate with a lot of my friends, and so that's what came out of my brain right now. But in a previous conversation where these kids, they come up, like how we used to make friends as kids, like, hey, want to see my doll? Want to see how high I can kick? Want to see how far I can throw this rock? It's like if you ever watched, I think it's Mad TV, where there was Stewie. Look what I can do.
Oh, yeah.
Look what I can do.
Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in years. Thank you for bringing that back.
Love Stewie in Mad TV. But yeah, so it's the willingness to like play and be vulnerable. I think play in adulthood requires vulnerability, because we inherit the conversation of we don't want to look stupid, we don't want to look silly, but like, silly is where magic happens.
Yeah.
Silly
It's
is
the
where
creative
magic
process.
happens.
I don't
Right.
know if you're familiar with the work of Stuart Brown around play, but as somebody who was a parentified child and really didn't do a lot of playing, I made things, I crafted, but I didn't understand play. His work really helped me frame it. We actually mention it in our book. And it's like, play isn't about being silly all the time. It can be. It's about unhooking from agenda and following what feels good and what will make you lose track of time. And that's the creative process requires that. Otherwise, we're just controlling, and control is rooted in fear, and fear is rooted in staying the same. So That's an endless loop.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, how can we then change these invisible conversations that we're having such that we create a sort of vicarious resilience or a vicarious playfulness, a vicarious abundance, a collective abundance in ourselves, our communities, our workplaces. Yeah. How do you say we begin to do that?
Well, I can tell you my dream for that. My
Tell me the
vision
dream.
for that is I've been working in the therapy and coaching model for decades now. And my dream and what I think the world is hungry for now, because it's getting uncomfortable enough and we're seeing that we can't control what matters enough and people change when discomfort pushes us to, is I see organizations and leaders who are brave enough to challenge the way things have always been done and work with people like you and with me to create a leadership model in their own work and their own organizations that affirms the whole human and the whole community. And I part of what lights me up so much about that is when we work in big organizations, it doesn't just affect the bottom line. It affects everyone's partner, their children, their neighbors, who they interact with at the grocery store, because this model of leadership is a way of moving. It is a way of being. It creates so many more ripples than the old model that says what I do behind my desk and the numbers in the spreadsheet are my leadership. This is so much more vast. And I think if we can get it on the organizational level, it goes to the systemic and it goes to the personal and it feels more pleasurable. It doesn't feel like something we're forcing. It feels like something we're coming home to. And I think our nervous system, like rain seeping into the ground, when we're in pleasure, when we're in connection, we can receive that more. It seeps in, it integrates. Whereas when we're clenched fist, it's harder. We literally have barriers to integrating new insight. So that's my dream. No bigs. Just
Yes.
life-changing ripples in the world.
Well, here's what I want to say about that, though. That all starts with each individual person being willing to take personal responsibility for the invisible conversations that they are having with the people in their lives. I am so 10 toes down for people's individual transformation because we know that the system, the organizations are made up of individual people. And when you get enough people who are in a shared conversation, doing different things, modeling different things, then that vision gets to be realized at a larger level. And so if you're listening to this, that big vision has to start with you. It has to start at the individual, which is why I always ask people to share the podcast episodes because each individual is responsible for their transformation.
Yeah. And I think the both and I see is yes. And I've worked with several clients over the years who are in organizations where leadership is holding the old story and they're trying so hard to bring the new one. They're doing their personal work, but the power structure has an impact. And so when the person who's making decisions, the people who are making decisions also are on board, the change happens so much faster in the culture.
This is what I'm saying. The people at the making the decisions need to do the individual work. The people at the government levels need to be doing the work, right? So
yes, they do.
Yes. This is exactly same is what I like to say. Right?
Yeah.
Girl, look, we're gonna have to have a whole nother conversation because
I know it's gonna be a 100-part series.
100-part series. We're just scratching the surface. But I do want to bring it back around before we close, just to what we've talked about. We're always having these individual conversations, and everything that we're doing, like you said, is that not everything, but 95% of what we're doing is unconscious. What we're communicating is unconscious. And so I think it's important to bring it back around to that, because until you're aware of that, then you can't interrupt a pattern of that.
Yep. There's invisible strings that pull us toward what we've been and what we've known, unless we're willing to meet it differently. Because
Exactly.
that's part of why I bring somatics into my work. Is I work with smart people. And
Mhm.
I have told countless people, if you could have figured this out with your brilliant conscious brain, you would have 6,000 times over. It's not about that. It's something that lives deeper. So we're going to go there and
Yeah.
unravel that thread. And then it's going to bubble up, and all your
Mhm.
perspectives, thoughts, choices, decisions, relationships are going to be different. It's a bottom up approach rather than a top down trying to force it.
Yes.
So,
That's our
um,
next conversation. That
right.
is our next conversation, how we can leverage what we feel in our bodies into sort of like our decision making and transforming our minds, right? Like how we can leverage what we feel in our bodies to move us through to different spaces. I really think that's the next conversation, the conversation about leveraging our bodies,
Yeah.
leveraging the information that our
The
bodies give us.
intelligence, deep,
Yes.
unfiltered, unapologetic intelligence of the
Yes.
body.
So
Yeah.
somatic intelligence. That's our
Yep.
next conversation. Well, girl, look, look before we start another whole conversation, because we could. I want to thank you for being here with me today. I want to thank you for just being who you
Mm.
are and being in my world. I
Oh,
really do. And I'd like for you to share with our audience how they can follow you, how they can reach out to you, if they would like to work with you, if they would like to hire you, any organizations or leaders, how can they reach out to you?
wonderful. The easiest way, the one-stop shop, is my website, which is Meghan-O'Malley.com, Meghan-O'Malley.com. You can find out about my podcast, my book, my offerings. It's all there. So it can be a choose your own adventure exploration.
Awesome. And I will once again say to the audience, we have TEDx Talks out now, and you need to listen to Megan's TEDx Talk. What's the name of your talk?
Well, if TED doesn't change the name, because I've learned that they might, it is called Unshakable: The Power of Connection When Everything is Crumbling. And it's really my love letter to a world that feels really unstable and changing, and how we can meet that and still move forward in the direction of what matters to us.
Yes, love that. And we will make sure that we include that link in the show notes. So you all go check the show notes so that you can listen to this talk. And you will be seeing this face again because we have another conversation to have. I want to thank the audience because, listen, without you all, there is no podcast. You know this. Thank you for being with me every week. And please share this episode. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with a colleague. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And please remember to hit that subscribe button so that you get to be a part of conversations like this every week. With that, I thank you once again, Megan.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Looking forward to the next time. And for you all, until the next time we see each other, y'all stay empowered.